So Dr. Harold Wanless, he's extremely renowned, prestigious sea level rise expert. He studies it from a paleo perspective. So he's, watches what happens as the Earth has gone through all these different eras and epochs. And it is also, unlike so many scientists that are much more reserved and are afraid to talk openly about worst case projections, and not just IPCC worst case projections, but real worst case projections of how bad things really look like they're going. He's openly critical of the IPCC and other scientists that won't really talk about it. And so he talks about the fact that, he cites, I went in there talking to him about what I had seen on Miami Beach with the city engineer and what another scientist, a colleague of his who is an IPCC author, was talking about the worst case scenario that National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration had just put out at that time for sea level rise by 2100 was 8.5 feet. And that was an upgrade that had happened right when I was there speaking with him.
How many feet?
8.5 feet by 2100.
What would that do to South Florida?
It would be gone. And Wanless interrupted me when I was talking about those two fellows, and he was angry, and he said, look, it's over. We've kicked the bucket. People need to understand 93% of all the heat that we've added into the atmospheres have been absorbed by the oceans. To give you an idea of how much heat that is, if they hadn't absorbed it, the atmosphere today would be 97 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than it is right now. He said, when you have that much heat in the oceans, all the melting from below on these ice sheets, like particularly the Western Antarctic ice sheet, and we're seeing this accelerate so dramatically just even since my book came out, the scientists are scratching their heads. Dr. Eric Rigno, lead author of the study that came out the week that my book was published, a study on the melting across the Antarctic that's happening. And it showed that there was a 6-fold increase in melting since just 1970. And when the New York Times interviewed him about that study, his quote literally is, Antarctica is melting away. And so with that happening, that's the single biggest ice source on the planet. And we're seeing similar accelerations in Greenland and other areas. That's why Wanless said that he cites a James Hansen study that came out that said we could see 10 feet by 2050. Wanless said at the rate of exponential change, these runaway feedback loops that are kicking in, collapsing ice sheets, things coming unplugged, we could see 20 feet by 2100, he said. And the thing that I have in the book, that it's really essentially how I ended the section of the book with my interaction with Wanless that really blew me away, was he pointed out that when the Earth came out of the last ice age and things warmed up and the ice melted, that CO2 levels in the atmosphere gained about 100 parts per million. And corresponding with that was melting of ice that led to 100 feet of sea level rise. So it's a pretty easy correlation, 100 ppm CO2, 100 feet of sea level rise. So I thought about that for a second and I said, okay, so from when the Industrial Revolution began, it was 280 ppm CO2 in the atmosphere. Now we're at it was 410 when I spoke with them. Now we're at 414. So I said, okay, now we're at 410. So that's 130 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere increase. So is that 130 feet sea level rise? And he just nodded, yes.
Well,